Okay, so let's take a moment to take attendance when the system allows you to do so. And in the meantime, I'm going to write a couple of things about. Okay, are you guys able to take attendance? Okay, good. Let me close out of this. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, so before I start today's class, I think some of you may already have gotten the graded assignment 2 back from me. I sent it to you back in an email or in the Google Drive. There are a few of you who probably still haven't gotten it back, but I will get through those. I'll get through those. I'll grade those and get them back to you by today or tomorrow. Okay, and then please remember that next Tuesday is writing assignment 3. So same thing, like the yeah, come to class whether in person or Zoom, and then I will post some questions I'll post the questions on Moodle today or tomorrow. So please take a few days to look at the questions, work out find the answers to them, and then come to class next Tuesday to write out write out the response to those questions, just like you have done. For writing assignment 2, I think most of you actually turn it into me. Electronically. But I think there are a few of you who actually came to class and wrote it. So I'll bring the written responses to class on Thursday. So those of you who actually wrote the responses in class, I can just return you the assignments. Okay. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so for this week and probably the next few weeks, we are going to start by looking at human nature. So I think this is kind of an apt. This is an apt topic to get into, especially after the movie that we saw last week. The main question that we are interested in for this week is the question of whether, it's the basic question of whether are we selfish? Are we selfish by nature? That's the basic question that we are interested in this week. Today we're going to go over some main ideas, and then we're going to look at this story from Plato's Republic about this topic. On Thursday, we are going to go into we're going to look at what a couple of Chinese philosophers from 2,000 years ago have to say about this same topic. I don't generally do Chinese philosophy in intro to philosophy, but this is an exception, just because I think they do have some interesting things to say. It's kind of a strange. It is kind of a strange thing to kind of dive into ethics by talking about this big question of are we selfish by nature? But I think it's a good question. Because I think, if you're dealing with ethics, if you're talking about ethics and morality, most of the time the main question is what should you do, right? Should I be, should I return money that I have borrowed? Should I be courageous? Or should I be honest towards other people and stuff like that? Or should I be just and observe and obey the laws? So there are all these questions that come up in ethics. What should I do? But I think another important question that we should be asking is why? Why should we do those things anyway? Why should I be honest towards other people? Why should I return money that I said I was going to return? Why should I keep promises? What are my reasons for doing all of these things? Now, if you are an egoist, if you are an egoist, if you are a psychological egoist, your answer would be you should do these things only because they benefit you. So why should I keep promises? Well, the only reason I have for keeping promises is because keeping promises ultimately benefit myself. Maybe if I don't keep promises, if I don't make good on my promises, then people won't trust me anymore. And then maybe I won't be able to get the things I want from other people in the future. And maybe I should obey the laws, because if I don't obey the laws, I'll get punished. I should pay taxes, for example, because if I don't pay taxes, then maybe I'll get punished for not paying taxes. So long story short, if you are an egoist, you basically believe that the only reason why you should obey laws or do anything at all concerning other people is for your own self-interest. It's for self-interest. Not everybody believes this, but this is basically the egoist position. And I thought we will start from this because it is an interesting position to look at. Now, There are basically two kinds of egoists. There's the psychological egoist, and the ethical egoist. So the psychological egoist basically says, look, we should only care about ourselves when we do anything, because when it comes down to it, we are made in such a way that we are really only capable of caring for ourselves. We are only capable of acting in self-interest. And you might say that, you might say that we are hardwired in such a way that we are only capable of looking out for ourselves. We are only capable of acting in self-interest. So the psychological egoist is basically saying, look, there's no use fighting it. There's no use trying to, there's no use trying to do things for other people if you don't have to. Because if you do that, if you try to act in a purely altruistic and not self-interested fashion, that's just going to end in failure. Because we are not made this way. We are made in such a way that we are only capable of acting in self-interest. Okay, so let's see. There are some chat messages here. Okay, sorry. Okay. Now, as I said, there are two kinds of egoists. There is another kind of egoist called the ethical egoist. Now, the ethical egoist basically says, look, it doesn't really matter if we are capable of acting in an altruistic manner. It doesn't matter if we are capable of acting in an unselfish manner. Even if we are capable of being altruistic, we should still only act selfishly. We should still only act in a for self-interest. Because you got to look out for yourself, right? You got to look out for number one. If you don't look out for yourself in this, harsh world that we live in, who will, right? So the ethical egoist basically says, look, it doesn't really matter how you're made or how you're hardwired. Even if you're capable of not acting in self-interest, you should still only act in self-interest. Because if you don't do that, you are being really foolish. You're just being foolish. I wonder, from last week's movie, the Parasite, I wonder if the kings are actually ethical egoists. Sounds like they are. Okay, well, so basically these are the two positions. The two kinds of egoists. So the psychological egoist is basically making a statement about human nature, right? They're saying, look, human nature is such that no matter what, you're only capable of acting for your own self-interest. That's the only thing that can get you out of bed in the morning and get you going. It's useless to try to pretend to be altruistic or anything like that. I mean, sometimes you have to do things for other people, but you should only do that if there is a law saying that you should do it. Yeah, you should only do it if there is a threat of punishment, right? The ethical egoist is not really making a statement about human nature. He's saying, I don't really care what I can or cannot do. All I know is that I should only act in self-interest and nothing else. If I don't act in self-interest, if I don't look out for myself, then I'm being foolish. Okay, so this. Before I go on, actually, let me just take a picture of this thing because I need to take pictures. Okay, let me take a picture of the board first while you ruminate over what I just said. Okay, so it turns out that this question about what human nature is like, are we selfish by nature? It turns out that this question has been the topic of conversation for a very long time, and for a very long time, by very long time I mean like a couple of thousand years. If you go all the way back. If you go all the way back in the history of philosophy to Plato, you will see that this. Okay, sorry. If you go all the way back to the history of philosophy to Plato, you will see that there is a very interesting story in Plato's Republic, which basically discusses, brings up this question. Okay, I feel that, I feel that I should probably say something about Plato and his relation to Socrates. Hey, Brendan, were you in field 1103 yet when I talked about the relationship between Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I kind of know it, right? But
okay. So what is the relationship between Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato?
I think, well, I know Plato kind of was a student-ish of Socrates. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Socrates didn't write anything, and Plato wrote Socrates' works for him, kind of, because Socrates didn't write anything. And then Plato also had his own things, and then I think Aristotle was a student of Plato.
Yeah, that is pretty much right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Cool, thank you. Yeah, so basically, I mean, I think you probably have heard of Socrates, even if you have never taken a philosophy class. So the relationship between Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle is that, well, Plato is a student of Socrates, and Aristotle was in turn a student of Plato. Now Socrates, as Brendan just mentioned, Socrates basically did not write anything throughout his entire life. He was just a more or less ordinary citizen of Athens, who basically did what most regular citizens would do. He basically did what regular citizens of Athens would do. I think, probably had a job. I think people had jobs in those days. Yeah, I think he had a job, and then he served in the military. At some point in his life, he started sitting in the marketplace on certain days of the week and engaging in conversations with people, mostly young people, about things that we would recognize as philosophy today. So they would talk about stuff like what is good, what is bad, what is virtue, what maybe even what is the meaning. And Plato was a young man from a pretty well-to-do, well-established Athenian family. Most of his family members were, politicians. So anyway, Plato was one of the young men who came and talked to Socrates. And Socrates, as a result of all of these conversations he was having with young men in the market square, the authorities of the day became rather threatened by him. I don't exactly know why they were threatened by him. I think part of it is because they felt that if he was talking to young men from all these influential families, he was probably giving them ideas about stuff and corrupting their minds. And so they arrested him and charged him with two things. They charged him with corrupting the youth and also with introducing new gods into the pantheon. I have no idea where the second charge came from. So they arrested him on these two trumped up charges and put him to death. Now, as Brendan mentioned, Socrates basically sat in the market square and had these conversations with people, and he didn't actually write any of these conversations down. Whatever we know of Socrates today, they actually mostly came from Plato. So Plato wrote a bunch of dialogues. He wrote a big number of dialogues, and in all of these dialogues, Socrates was the central character. And one of these dialogues was called The Republic. The Republic is a really long treatise on the nature of justice, what is justice, and very shortly we are going to look at a very small passage from Book 2 of the Republic. Okay, and then Plato, later on in life, originally, as I said, Plato was from a really prominent Athenian family. Originally, he wanted to enter politics, but he was so disgusted by, he was pretty disgusted by the way Socrates was put to death. So he decided that, politics wasn't the way to go if you wanted to, if he wanted to have an impact upon the world. So he decided to go into, I guess you can call it education. He founded a school called the Academy, and that school attracted a bunch of young men, and one of the young men was Aristotle. So Aristotle was a student of was a student of Plato. Okay, so yeah, so basically that's by way of a brief history of early Greek philosophy. Right. So the Republic. Okay, as I said, the Republic is basically what do you call it? Is a long dialogue. There are 10 chapters altogether. Sorry, 10 books. There are 10. There's book 1 to book 10. So there are 10 books altogether of the Republic. The entire Republic is basically a long conversation between Socrates and his friends. I don't know if the conversation actually happened. Yeah, a lot of it is probably made up by Plato, but it's a long conversation between Socrates and his friends on justice, on the nature of justice. There are a few characters in the Republic. I actually don't remember all of them, but Socrates was the main character, was the protagonist in the Republic. And then there was Glaucon. Glaucon is one of it's actually one of Plato's brothers in real life. Plato himself did not appear in the Republic. I'm not sure why. And then there is another person by the name of Dionysus. Right. So and then there are a few other smaller characters that pop in and out, but these are the main characters. So Glaucon basically, in the Republic, Glaucon serves as a kind of foil to Socrates. I mean, Socrates would bring up certain things, some ideas, and then Glaucon would kind of play the devil's advocate to oppose those ideas. But by opposing Socrates, he actually ends up helping Socrates to develop his ideas. So he's kind of a useful devil's advocate in that way. Okay, so in what we are about to look at, in book 2 of the Republic, Glaucon brings up this story to try to show that he basically brings up this story, or he brings up the story of Gyges to try to show that whatever we think of justice is basically bunk. He basically tries to show that if you think of justice as obeying the law and being a law-abiding and just citizen, people are only just because they don't have the power to do whatever they want and get away with it. People are generally selfish. I mean, people are naturally selfish. So if left to their own devices, they will do whatever they want and try to get away with it. But most people don't have that kind of power to do whatever they want and get away with it. So most people settle for second best. And second best is by second best, I mean most people get together and they decide that since I can't do all the bad things to you that I want to do, and since you can't do all the bad things to me that you want to do, because we don't have infinite power, what we're going to do is to come to an agreement. We are going to agree to not do certain bad things to each other. Don't steal each other's property. Don't murder each other. Don't rape each other. So we are going to come to this agreement, and this agreement is what we recognize as the law or the legal system. So the legal system is basically born from this agreement that people make between each other to not do evil to each other. But you can see that it's kind of a fragile system because if people could do something, if you had the power to really do whatever you want to each other, you would. So the story of Gyges is a story that Glaucon came up with to try to illustrate this general idea that justice is basically just a sort of compromise. It's just a second best solution that people come up with to try to accommodate each other. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read directly from this thing from the Republic. If you have the textbook, it is on page 510 of your textbook. Okay, I'm going to read directly from this excerpt from the Republic, which is in 510 of your textbook, and then we'll go on from there. Okay, so So this is Glaucon speaking. He says that even those who practice justice do so against their will because they lack the power to do wrong. This we could realize very clearly if we imagine ourselves granting to both the just and the unjust the freedom to do whatever they like. We could then follow both of them and observe where their desires led them, and we would catch the just man red-handed traveling the same road as the unjust. The reason is the desire for undue gain, which every organism by nature pursues as a good, but the law possibly sidetracks him to honor equality. The freedom I just mentioned would most easily occur if this man had the power which they say the ancestor of the Lydian Gyges possessed. The story is that he was a shepherd in the service of the ruler of Lydia. There was a violent rainstorm and an earthquake which broke open the ground and created a chasm at the place where he was tending sheep. Seeing this and marveling, he went down into it. He saw, besides many other wonders of which we are told, a hollow bronze horse. There were window-like openings in it. He climbed through them and caught sight of a corpse which seemed of more than human stature, wearing nothing but a ring of gold on his finger. And this ring the shepherd put on and came out. He arrived at the usual monthly meeting, which reported to the king on the state of flocks, wearing the ring. As he was sitting among the others, he happened to twist the hook of the ring towards himself to the inside of his hand. And as he did this, he became invisible to those sitting near him, and they went on talking as if he had gone. He marveled at this, and fingering the ring, he turned the hook outward again and became visible. Perceiving this, he tested whether the ring had this power, and so it happened. If he turned the hook up inwards, he became invisible, but was visible when he turned it outwards. When he realized this, he at once arranged to become one of the messengers to the king. He ran, committed adultery with the king's wife, attacked the king with her help, killed him, and took over the kingdom. Okay, so basically the story, right? The story is that there's this shepherd who stumbled upon this magical ring, and then if this ring has the power to make him invisible if he turned the ring inwards, and so he basically used this power to seduce the king's wife, the queen, and take over the kingdom. Okay, so what's the moral of the story? Okay, so the moral of the story is as follows. Now, if there were two such rings, one worn by the just man, the other by the unjust, no one, as these people think, no one would be so incorruptible that he would stay on the path of justice or bring himself to keep away from other people's property and not touch it, when he could with impunity take whatever he wanted from the market, go into houses and have sexual relations with anyone he wanted, kill anyone, free those he wished from prison, and do the other things which would make him like a god among men. His actions would be in no way different from those of the other, and they would both follow the same path. This, some would say, is a great proof that no one is just willingly, but under compulsion, so that justice is not one's project, since wherever either thought he could do wrong with impunity, he would do so. Every man believes that injustice is much more profitable to himself than justice, and any exponent of this argument would say that he's right. The man who did not wish to do wrong with that opportunity and did not touch other people's property would be thought by those who knew it to be very foolish and miserable. They would praise him in public, thus deceiving one another for fear of being wrong. So much for my second topic. Okay. So the key moral of the story is basically, hold on a second. The key moral of the story is that no one is just willingly. Okay, so the key moral of the story, of this whole story, the thing that Glaucon is trying to prove with this story is that no one is just willingly. Another way of, a sort of corollary theory of this is that injustice is more profitable than right. So, and he shows this by saying, look, I mean, if you had this ring, that allow you to become invisible whenever you wanted to, nobody who had this ring would be able to resist the temptation to do bad things to other people for his own profit. And that by itself will show us that no one is just willingly. If we are just and if we obey the laws, it's only because we are afraid of getting caught. And that also shows that ultimately injustice is more profitable than justice. Because if you can get away with doing it, with doing injustice, you will. Okay, so I actually, I actually would like to hear your opinions on this. So I'm going to use this opportunity to pose a question. And the question is very simply, does the story of Gyges show that? Does it show that no one is just willingly? Does it show that injustice is more profitable? Okay, so, and I know it's two questions, but it's really kind of the same question. Does the story of Gyges show that no one is just willingly? Does it show that injustice is more profitable than justice? Okay, I'm going to break you up into groups to come out with an answer to this question. If you are sitting here in the classroom, I think the four of you can be one group. Okay, but if you are not in the classroom, I mean, if you're on Zoom, I'm going to go ahead and break you up into groups. So before I do that, I think you probably need to remember this question or maybe write it down. Because once I break you out into groups, you probably won't be able to see the question. So please take a moment. Please take a few seconds to maybe write down this question. Okay, I'll give you a few. Oh, sorry. Maybe you can't see the question. My bad. Okay, here's the question. So if you're on Zoom, it's really annoying. Sorry. How do I get? Okay, if you're on Zoom, please take a few seconds to either remember this question or write it down, and then I'll break you up into groups. Okay, it's been a few seconds. Okay, so let me do this. How many people are on Zoom? 10. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. Okay, so you should be. I hope you have written down the question, and so once you get into the breakout rooms, please take maybe about 5 or 10 minutes to come up with an answer to this question, and nominate one person to present this answer to the rest of the class. Okay, so you should be getting an invitation right now to join the group. Okay. And as for those of you who are actually here in the classroom, you guys can form one group and take a few minutes to come up with an answer to the question. And the question is this. Okay. I'll hear from you in the future. Okay, Noble, Riley, and Trevor, I need you guys to join your respective breakout rooms.
Just the fear of potential, or you just don't want to do it. In case it's not profitable.
Some sort of fear of yourself or something.
I guess just in regards to outside authority. But I do think if given a chance, like in a story, something more extreme like that, I think most people would take that chance if they had like, you know, the invisible or I do think that.
It's kind of funny the parallels to the Lord of the Rings. Where, like having to the ring is too powerful to be unjust and get away with it. But I think that I agree, and that no one is just willingly. I think more down to your decision is there's still some kind of fear of doing something, and something out of it. It's very self-interested when it comes down to whether you're going about things because it's just not the right thing, but you're probably doing it because you don't want to look like a person that's not doing it right. Whether there's an actual physical consequence to it or it's consequence, that can be something that if you have the opportunity to get away with it, most people will, and it'll be more, the opportunity presents itself, the other reason you're thinking of doing it, because it's more profitable. And so, if you wouldn't think about doing something unjust, then probably would be profitable. The injustice would be a little more profitable.
Do you guys have any thoughts on this? Okay, let's reconvene everybody. Okay. Okay, so hold on a second. Okay, so this is the question. Okay, let's start by hearing from the people on Zoom. Okay, so let's start with the group that has Abby and Devon Smith in it. Okay, so what do you guys think? What is your answer to this question? Does it show that no one is just willingly? Does it show that injustice is more profitable than justice? Abby and Devon, what do you guys think?
It shows that, it does show that, because it's basically arguing that people are unjust just because they feel like they have there's consequences of injustice.
Right. So you think that it shows that people are just only because they fear the consequences?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Oops. Okay. What about the group with Jared and Sayer?
We said that that like no one is just willing. We agree with that.
Oh, you agree? Yeah, you guys agree with the idea. You guys agree that no one is just willingly as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, inherently, we just really want to survive.
Sorry, there was some background noise, but do you mind repeating yourself?
Inherently, we just want to survive, so being willingly just isn't something that we really do in our nature. It's just once we have a baseline for moral reasons or consequences, like she was saying.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thanks. What about group that's here in class? What do you guys think?
I mean, like just based off the story, it shows that, but I think like people like I feel like people are given chances to do something unjust a lot, but they choose not to, even if it would have consequences, like no one is watching or something, but they choose not to, not because they the consequences, but just because they don't want to, or they feel it's wrong themselves, not because they're like not because they have power or authority, because they have to.
Interesting. Yeah. So right. So the story is a bit okay. Just repeating this for the benefit of all the people watching Zoom. So Trinity brought up an interesting point, which is that given the way the story is constructed, it kind of lets you. It might kind of lead you to believe that people are only are never just willingly. They wouldn't do it kind of leads you to believe that they wouldn't do the right thing if there isn't any consequence attached to it. But Trinity was saying that it seems that in real life, lots of people would still continue to do the right thing, even if there's no threat of punishment or any threat of any negative consequences. That's what you said, right?
Kind of just like small, I guess just small things, like people every day just choose to do the right thing even though no one's watching.
Right.
But I do think like kind of like the story, it was like kind of more exaggerated, like you have a very bad way of doing really bad stuff without people finding out, and I think most people might take that. But as far as just like small things that happen like every day, doesn't have to be like absolutely that makes you decide to do the right thing.
So maybe are you saying that somehow the presence of a ring, the presence of a ring or the presence of something which lets you know that you're a superpower, the presence of this superpower or the ring is more likely to lead you to, is more likely to lead you to do bad things because.
It's like a safety net, like you know for sure because of this something that would make people more inclined to do something.
Yeah, I wonder if it's kind of like if somebody, it's kind of like if somebody would give you a credit card that has like unlimited spending limit. Let's say it's an unlimited spending limit, and somehow you don't have to pay or you don't have to pay the bills on the card anymore. Maybe somebody is paying bills every month. Sounds like in that situation, you'll be more likely to spend money on things that you don't need, maybe spend money frivolously, right? And it's kind of like that, right? Yeah. So, so in the case, because the credit card is a kind of the unlimited credit card is a kind of safety net. So in the same way, maybe you're saying that in the same way, the ring also is a kind of safety net in that way. That's really interesting. Whereas in everyday life, if people were to get just one or two opportunities to do whatever they want, they might still not do it. So is it because when people behave themselves in everyday life, even if there is no punishment for it, are they behaving themselves because they are so used to behaving themselves, or are they behaving themselves because I don't know, because they really believe it's good to be good?
Say, yeah, that, we go back to the selfishness behavior. And it could be because they're used to it, so they're gonna do it because that's what they feel they need to do, but also the other way, they're going to do the right thing because they feel it's what they need to do, but it doesn't need to be, the influence behind that doesn't always need to be like a negative consequence. Sometimes it can be, oh, if I do this, I'm going to feel good. I'm, going to make myself feel good because it's what I believe is the right thing. So even though no one else is going to, judge you for it or have any negative consequence, you're going to feel better about it. So you're going to do it because you're making yourself feel better. Kind of self-influencing the idea, so it's still kind of selfish. No, I want to feel better, and I know if I do this, I'll make myself feel better and do the right thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's still kind of selfish in a way, because if making yourself feel better if that counts as a kind of selfishness, then I guess it is selfish in a way. But it's a kind of a different kind of selfishness because they're not doing it to, there's a difference between being motivated by what I call negative things and being motivated by positive things. So if I think what Laopan is talking about in this story is that, Guidance is motivated by a negative thing. He's motivated negative because he's doing all of these things because he knows that there are no punishments, right? But in your case, if you are doing it because you feel good about yourself after you do it, that sounds like a positive motivation. It sounds like you're doing it because you feel good, and maybe because it fits into your image of who you are as a person. Maybe you think of yourself, as somebody who's generous, or who's compassionate, who helps other people. And so by continuing to do good things, you basically reinforce this idea that you have of yourself. So it could be that maybe people will still continue to be just willingly, even if they have the ring, or at least maybe a few people will continue to be just willingly even after they have the ring, because they might feel that doing nice things for other people is kind of who they are. It's kind of who they are. It kind of reinforces their image of who they are. If you think of the ring, as, if you think of having the ring as kind of like having a superpower, then it is possible that some people who have the superpower will do all kinds of bad things, because there's no negative consequence. But it sounds that it's also possible that people would use that superpower to continue to do good and help other people, because it kind of reinforces their sense of who they are. Okay, there is one more group on Zoom that I've not heard from. Which one is it? Oh, it's the group with Jacob and Riley. Okay, the group with Jacob and Riley, what do you guys think of this whole thing?
So basically, we agreed with it because of the fact that when a child is born, they are selfish by nature. They don't want to share. they don't want to like share, and they only complain about their own needs, etc. And basically, they are taught selflessness. They are taught what is just, and it's more of a societal thing that teaches them what is just. And it seems to be that we are inherently selfish to begin with.
So you guys basically think that if you are given the ring, you're basically revert to being a child.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. So in my other class, in introduction to ethics, we looked at, I think some weeks ago, we looked at this philosopher who actually had something to say about this. So the question is, is it natural? Is it natural for us? Is it natural for human beings to be just, or to be compassionate, to be nice towards other people? Well, yes and no. I mean, okay, so the question is it natural? Is it natural for us to be, is it natural for us to be moral? Well, as I said, answers could be yes or no. You could answer, one answer is no, and that's basically what Jacob and Riley are saying. You could say that the answer is no. It's not natural for us to be just, because if you look at us as children, when we were children, we were pretty selfish. We had to be taught to share our food with other people, to share things with other people. So you could say that no, it's not natural for us to be moral, to be just, because as children we are not born just. Okay, so that's one answer. But the other answer is you could also answer yes. Why yes? The idea is that look, it is true that we are not born just. It is true that children are by nature, children are born selfish. Okay, that is true. But what we are born as, what we are born with, does not determine who we become, right? I mean, there are all kinds of things that you are right now today that you weren't when you were born. When you were born, you probably couldn't speak English. You had to be taught to speak English. You probably couldn't do any mathematics at all. You had to be taught mathematics. And the list goes on and on. So there are all kinds of things that you are today that you weren't when you were a kid. So it'll be very strange to say that, we humans are not linguistic creatures because we weren't born speaking a language. That would be a very strange thing to say, because humans, right? For us humans, it is natural. It is natural to communicate using language, right? It's also very strange to say that we are not mathematical creatures because we weren't born knowing algebra. Again, that's also a very strange thing to say, because knowing mathematics is something that humans can do, and can do very well. So the idea is that you could say, maybe you could say, yes, it is natural for us to be moral, because what we are born with, is not the same. It's not equal to what is natural. Maybe what is natural, a lot of the things that come naturally to us now, like speaking and doing mathematics, are things that actually have to be learned. So, maybe that's the same thing with morals, right? We have to learn to be moral, but that doesn't mean it's not natural. Right?
Just to kind of add on to that argument, just what I was kind of thinking is, yes, you're born selfish, whatever, but naturally, you are a social creature. You can thrive on groups. You look at monkeys and everything. They have groups, or else they survive on. Anyway, we're social creatures, and so that's just part of the natural development. So even though we're not born with it, naturally we're going to develop morality because we are we drive on social interaction, and a kind of part of social interaction is morality.
Yeah. You need morals. You need morals to operate socially, right? Even if you are just pretending moral, you still have to at least go through the motion to get by in society. So if I mean, this is an interesting point. I mean, if it is true that we need morals in order to be social creatures, and most of us would agree that human beings are social creatures, but we weren't born social creatures, right? A baby is actually a very anti-social creature. I mean, they cry just whenever they want to. So again, even though we are naturally social creatures, even though we are social creatures, we weren't born that way. We have to be, taught. We have to be taught all the things that we need in order to be social, including morals. Yeah, so that's an interesting point. So if you think of morals as part of the package, that you need in order to operate as a social being, then you could say that being moral is natural, even though you're not born with it.
I would kind of say, you are born with it, but more of like you're born with, the potential and like the eventual need for it. Like even though you don't act on it, like if you were to take a child and just, let it do its thing naturally, no other people, it would eventually, start looking for social, interaction. Like even though it's not born like that, the brain, is going to start pushing for it as it gets older. It's just part of what it needs to develop, even though it doesn't act on it, it's still there. So I kind of say you are born with it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we could say that you are born with the capacity for it. So we are born with the capacity to learn language, and we are also born with the capacity to become moral beings. And because language and morality are both necessary to function socially. Interesting. So perhaps it is natural in the sense that, not in the sense that it is not what we are born with, but it is natural in the sense that we have the capacity. For it. So if you answer yes to the question of is it natural for us to be moral, if your answer is yes, then most probably you mean that it is natural for us in the sense that we have the capacity to develop into moral creatures, just like we have the capacity to develop into linguistic creatures. Yeah, that actually sounds like an interesting answer. So I mean, notice that what's going on is that the person who says no and the person who says yes, they have slightly different understanding of what counts as natural. You might say that the person who says no is kind of working with a more narrow definition of natural. He said that something is only natural if you're born with it. But maybe the person who says yes is operating with a bigger, broader definition of natural. He's saying that in order for something to be natural, you don't have to be born with it. It's enough that you're born with the capacity to have that thing, to be moral, for example. So, I mean, if you think about it, that it makes actually a kind of sense because dogs, for example, right? Dogs will never develop it is not natural for them to speak English because they will never develop they basically don't have the capacity to speak English. Whereas it is natural for humans to speak a language. It doesn't have to be English, but it's natural for humans to speak a language because we have the capacity to learn a language. Whereas for dogs, it's not natural because they don't have the capacity. The same things maybe, we can maybe say the same things about being moral as well. And actually, that actually is a good, this is actually a good segue into what we're going to do on Thursday, because, well, let me just give you a very brief overview right now. Okay, so on Thursday, we are going to look at this debate between two Chinese philosophers. One is Mencius, and the other one is Xunzi. So they basically have a disagreement about whether human nature is good or bad. And part of the disagreement kind of stems on the idea of whether we humans have the capacity to become moral, and also, if so, what exactly is the capacity and what to do and how to develop the capacity. And I think this is a much more interesting debate in a sense, because if you are talking about natural in terms of having the capacity to develop morally, then I think that then the conversation about whether the conversation about whether human nature is by nature good or bad takes a very takes a very interesting turn. I was going to say something. But I kind of forgot. Part of it is this. What is human nature, right? What is human anyway? What do we mean by human? I think there are two ways to it. There are two things we can think about when we're thinking about what is human. A baby, a newborn baby is human in a biological sense, right? He has human DNA. He has all the physical features that we can identify with being human. So a baby is human in that purely biological sense. But it may be that for some philosophers, in order for somebody to really be human, you need to be more than just biologically human. You need to, develop at least some of your capacities. So if the baby, maybe if the baby is left in the woods and never develops language, and never develops any social skills or morality at all, or doesn't even know what morality is, then you could argue that there's a sense in which, yes, the baby is human in the biological sense, but there's a sense in which the baby is not fully human. Because one could argue perhaps that to be fully human is to also, in order to be fully human, you need to develop certain, certain capacities, such as language and morality and maybe some social etiquette and all these things. So, okay, so all of this, right? All of this is kind of by way of a preview for Thursday. I don't want to start talking about these two philosophers right now because then I'll have to end the class in some really abrupt way. Okay, so but this is good because then you can just this is one of those times where we're actually be looking at the textbook. So have a look at pages. Hang on a second. Pages 515, 515 to 5. Yeah, just look at 515 to 519, 515 to 519 in the textbook. Yes, and I think that's probably good enough to serve our purposes for Thursday. Okay, so with that, well, let's end the class a little bit early. So let's do that. Okay. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'll see you on Thursday.